Hey, Andrew, great to see you. I'm excited for this.
Hey Ken, how are you? Good to be here.
Doing well. And are you, I just listened to you on a podcast like yesterday, but it was dated. And I think it said at that time you were in Prague. Are you still up in Prague?
Still in Prague. I'm here in the WeWork here in Prague. Yeah, just the one, but yeah, beautiful
That,
city.
that does have a WeWork vibe to it. I'm a WeWork guy. I'm going to one as soon as we finish actually today. So
Yeah, they're all the same. But actually, the one here in Prague is it's in a listed building. It's got this beautiful 360 terrace rooftop. So it's a really nice building here.
very nice. Well, I'm excited to have you here. And as we talked about in the intro, I mean, you're the true player coach, having come from an athletic background, moved into corporate. Can you give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up here today?
Yeah, so I'll give it the quick version. I started out life, I guess, from a sports perspective. Playing all sports. English kid from the southeast of England, so football, rugby, cricket. And then it was the mid 80s, and there was a roller disco on in my town. All the kids went, and so I skated, and then we just started playing hockey. Like it was just a big thing. So we were buying ice hockey equipment. Didn't really know much about ice hockey at the time, but we had these leagues, and we would play uh, street hockey. And then in the mid 90s, I carried on playing. Then the inline, the rollerblades came in, and then the sport just blew up. And I started to take it really seriously. That was my game, playing inline hockey. And I moved to Canada, played there, played in Vancouver, kind of pursuing a professional career at inline hockey. And again, didn't really have a focus on ice hockey at the time. I played roller hockey down in inline roller hockey. I played it down in California as well. And then when I came back to the UK,
Can I ask, not to interrupt, but
yeah,
I'm just
go
so
for
I
it.
have clarity, is inline, can you describe like what is the setup for that? Like you don't
Yeah.
play in a rink necessarily, right? Like it's a different dimension than ice hockey, right?
Well, when you play at the kind of elite level,
Yeah.
it is on an ice rink. So they take the ice
Okay.
down, and there are some purpose-built rinks. So it will look like on TV. Sometimes people think it's ice hockey because it's got this
Okay.
plastic floor. The puck moves on it nicely, and so it looks. The only real difference is that there's less contact and there's one less player. So it's not 6 on 6; it's 5 on 5.
Is it faster?
Um, uh, in some ways, yes. In some ways, no. It's more methodical, I would say. Like the
Okay.
game is based. It's a lot more possession,
Okay.
keeping the puck, holding on to the puck. Whereas ice hockey, you're getting the puck across the blue line, you're keeping it in there.
Okay.
You know, it's a different game in that sense.
Cool.
So you're on the puck a lot more.
Okay.
So you know. But when I came back to the UK, this was around 2000. Sorry, 1998, 99. Then I started playing ice hockey because that was the only thing really available for me to keep, wanting to play at a decent level. So I played some semi-professional hockey, making that transition, and carried on playing with the British team at inline hockey, and stopped that in 2008. And then in 2010 became the head coach for Team GB. And that was kind of where things really started to develop for me, both from a kind of a leadership perspective, and I had some corporate background in leadership and so on. But so kind of bringing all that together, it was
How
it
did
was a
the
really nice
conversion
experience.
how did the conversion from player to head coach happen so quickly? Because it seems like usually there's some stops along the way, right before
Yeah,
jumping
it was
right
about
into
two
the big
years.
spot. Okay.
Yeah, it was about
That's
two
fast.
2 years out of the game, and I found it as an advantage actually because I felt like at the time I was 34, and I could still play a little bit. My hip was bad
Yeah.
though, and
Yeah.
it was one of the reasons why I stopped playing. But I felt close enough to the game that I could really empathize with the players.
Right.
And I felt that where I'd been, in those games where we'd been so close to beating teams like Austria or Slovenia, but never quite closed the deal.
Right.
I felt like if I could help that, I could help with that, and we did. We won Pool B and went up to the top 8 countries for the
Can I
first time. You
No,
know,
I'm sorry to pause you again, but I'm just curious because
no,
I
go
like
for
the
it.
mindset around this of when you were a player then, did you find yourself strategizing a little bit? I mean, I don't want to say second guessing your coaches because, whatever, they might listen to you, but but I do feel sometimes that people aspire to leadership or coaching or something. It's sort of when you're not in that role, you might be hey, here's what I would have done differently, right? Or here's a way
Right.
that we might
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
able
Yeah.
to beat the Swedes or whatever it was. And did did
Yeah.
did you know in your head, were you starting to strategize before you were even in that type of a
No, that's a
role?
really interesting question because if I look back, I've always been a coach, like coaching the
Right.
young players. I've always been in that teaching, learning space. But when I was playing, I don't know if I was so much actually. I think I was one of those players that was quite selfish, really. I was so focused on wanting to play well and uh, contribute to the team and win, that and we had a great coach. I think sometimes when you lose a bit of faith in the coach, maybe some of those conversations start to come up. But
Totally.
I always try to avoid them because I always think that once you start second guessing the coach or you start getting little cliques around the dressing room, it's usually worse than, you
Yeah.
know, just having a coach that doesn't know what they're talking about. You know what I mean?
Totally.
I
Totally.
just, but we were during that kind of reign when I was playing, we had a guy. He was a really good coach. So I was lucky. He kind of changed my outlook. So when I became the head coach, I felt like I was sort of building on his legacy,
Got it.
so
And I
that
know
was nice for me.
you had some tremendous success in that. What tell me what happened and when, like, once you got into that role?
So, well, initially it was pretty tough because despite everything I knew about leadership development, I went in like quite didactic, like everything I know about being a good facilitator. And I don't know what happened. I just became so passionate about it. And I said, well, we're going to be really values driven and we're going to have to play this style of hockey. And actually I got a lot of resistance in the first 6 months or so of playing, and to the point where I actually didn't, because Great Britain was amateur. We play against Sweden, Czech Republic, USA, Canada. Majority of those are professional ice hockey players coming across to play inline hockey. So they're off season. My guys play inline hockey all year. It's a hobby. So there was quite a bit of resistance, and I didn't have enough players for the team. I didn't have enough players come to the trial. I thought I'd have like 40 players, cut it down to 16, then my 12 skaters, 2 goalies,
Right.
and it would just be a nice, this vision I had. And I
Right.
got there, and the rink, it was in Sheffield, and it's quite dark in there and a little bit dusty. It's a bit run down. It looked even more run down and dusty, you know what I mean? Because there's like one guy sat there with his bag and another guy the other side of the rink. And I was like, where's the energy? Where's the atmosphere? This is not what I expected at all. So I sat down and spoke to the captain. I knew that the captain for the last few years was going to be my captain again. And we had a good relationship, and he gave me some quite a bit of tough love, that I, just calm down a little bit. Just, and so I started changing it up.
Had a lot of the guys early on the team, were they guys that, because you were so fresh off of playing yourself, were some of these guys that you had just played with? Like, did you have to go from being
there's a
their
few.
peer to their boss? Yeah.
Yeah, there were a few. Fortunately, some of the older players my age had moved on, but some of the young guys that I was playing with, they were now in their sort of late 20s and maturing as athletes. And
Right.
but we had some fresh guys. The previous coach, so there was my coach, and then we had a previous coach sort of in the interim, and he brought in a lot of young guys. Actually, he really took a risk, and that really set me up nicely that he'd taken that risk and put him out there, because by the time that 2-year difference of these young guys maturing and developing, they'd had some good experience. So we had a really good platform to build on. So the credit goes to the past coaches as well. But what I was able to do was to start to bring in some of the experience I've had in the corporate world, actually, and what I was teaching in leadership and around structure and values and processes and just thinking about more of a macro level, like how could we get some sponsorship? Could we do some other things? Could we do some partnerships with people? And starting to think a little bit differently, which the players hadn't really been exposed to. And that worked out really well for us because we were able to raise some money, which obviously makes things easier. And I started to change up my leadership. I started to build a leadership team around me. I've got an assistant coach. I really wanted somebody who was the complete opposite to me, would keep me grounded and kind of irritates me at times. We irritated each other.
Right.
But I felt that I needed someone a bit more analytical, because I'm big picture. I see the game. I understand the game. I've been immersed in the game. So I kind of just have this internal algorithm when I'm watching the game, and I can, but I need someone to help me with the the player selection and so on. I knew what players I wanted, and I have a kind of methodology around how I select. And so we started to build out this core leadership group within the players, and really doubled down on the ask, don't tell. Like really, I'd never played on a team that had beaten Austria, so what do I know? You guys might have some better insights than me, and showing some vulnerability and
is that how
so
you
on.
won them over? Was by bringing them into the fold, do you think, and kind of showing that mutual respect,
Definitely.
or what? That was the main thing.
I think so. I think that was the turning point, because up until then it was like, you're the coach, you tell us what to do. And then I started thinking back to my coach before and how much he involved me in some of the decision making, and kind of always, he'd pick up the phone, and I realized looking back, he was doing it to everybody. I thought I was unique, but he was
right. He's really making you feel special. Yeah.
I always felt like it was a one-to-one. So I thought, right, well, how do I? And I think the pivotal moment for me was when I thought of myself as being a mentor rather than just a coach. Like
right.
These young men that are coming into this team, regardless of whether we win or not, or whatever we achieve, what experience could I help them have, over during the time that I'm head coach? Because I thought about the experience I had and how I developed as a human under my coach, and maybe took it for granted at the time. So I thought, what type of people will they become, under my leadership and as a group? And I'm really proud actually of how the players have developed. We have one guy's working for Google in California, another guy's working at Boston Consulting Group. Guys have got their own personal training businesses. They've really had an experience, and I think I think I'm proud of that.
What would you say, Andrew, is you said you discovered to be more of a mentor than a coach, right? How would you define the difference between those two words?
Well, I think sometimes we get into semantics, but in business, I think they mean different things than they do in sports, because the coach in sports is the coach, but when we go into business, it's, we talk about the grow model and things like that.
Yeah. But in your world and on that team, what do you mean?
I suppose I'm probably thinking it from more of a kind of a hero's journey, kind of tapping into Joseph Campbell's, what's my role? How do I create heroes in this team and be their guide, their mentor, to sit down with them, give them time, make sure that they feel that they can phone me up and have 30, 40 minutes with no agenda to work through some challenges they might be having on a personal level that I, would affect their game.
Right.
And for them to feel that they could have that conversation, it would be completely confidential. And so just being present and listening, and I suppose that was the mentor in me, whereas the coach was the tactician.
Yeah, and I got this vibe, and tell me if I'm wrong, but just as you were telling the story, is that when you were in coach mode, kind of at the beginning, it was, I'm the coach, do what I say, this is where we're going, and it's more directive. And then when you talked about being a mentor, it's, we're on a journey together, and I'm going to help guide you maybe to where you're going, or help mentor you on that path, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the point there was that I knew this because I'd been teaching leadership, and I'd been, and it was a wake-up call for me as a leadership coach, because you think, well, I'm sharing this information with you. Why can't you go and deliver this in your organization? And then for myself to experience that same auto response in the hockey environment, and then have to catch myself and say, come on, Andrew, what are you doing? This is...
But isn't it funny that we do it all the time when the environment changes, like you're saying? You get to hockey and you go, well, wait a minute, this is how a coach acts, right? And even if it goes against what you know, and I think sometimes as leaders, we even do it with our kids, like, or one way at home, another way at work, and it's like trying to find that consistency that it applies all the way around if it's good leadership,
Yeah, it's the real, I think, bringing it in home and that, my eldest daughter's 23. So she has transitioned actually a little bit, because before, when she was 16, 17, she'd say, you're doing that thing. You're like, I'm the coach, Dad, just be normal. Whereas now she will ask for that. Yeah. I need that conversation, because she's, and I think we see that in businesses, when leaders go on a course, they say, well, my team are looking like I'm an alien now because I'm asking these questions and I'm trying to be this coach. And I say, because they have to learn how to be coached. You know what I mean? Like, it's a two-way street.
Well, and there's times like with your daughter as an example where there's a point where once you have credibility, you can come back and be direct, right? So it's like your daughter values your opinion now. She's not at it. She's not 16 and combative and living at home and trying to steal the keys for the car on a Saturday night, right? She's grown. She values your opinion, and I think in leadership and whether it's sports or corporate, it's kind of the same way in a way. Is once we have that credibility, then the recipient can grant us kind of the permission to be direct, right? And almost the responsibility to be like, hey, it's okay. Just tell me what to do. I trust you, right? Like that's,
And I think that, that's such an important thing, I think. And I think often in sports, it certainly happens in business, but I see even in elite sports, where I look at it as three kind of components. You're either on the sideline coaching, you're either on the training ground coaching and training, or you're away from the game having a mentoring conversation, walk around a park, over a coffee, But I don't see enough coaches doing the mentoring. They're doing the bench coaching, so they're shouting and giving out commands. They're doing some of the training, but I think the mentoring conversation is where the trust is built. Where we have this conversation, like if you're my coach and you've given me 30, 40 minutes of your time, really good conversation. When you do bark at me or shout at me on the sideline, I'm like, yes, coach, no problem, because we've got a relationship there.
Well, it's like minus the mentoring. It's like, why should I do this? Like, how do I know you care about me? Right. Yeah. Like in business, especially, I mean, it's like if a sales manager is hit your numbers because I want to make my bonus. It's like, well, I'll hit my numbers if I feel like it. I'm not going to do it for you because you're only in it for yourself. Why should I be in it for you? Right. But if it's, hey, I believe in you. I hired you. I want to see you take my job. I've got a vested interest in you. Let's move up together. Let's be invested in each other's lives and each other's families. Then you get to ask different things of each other. I think when you have a relationship like that.
Yeah, I think it completely changes the game. And the problem is that I see is that people see it as important. So intellectually, the leaders get it, right? So they're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I should have that conversation. But they don't see it as, they see it as important, but not urgent, using the Eisenhower stuff. It kind of gets bumped and then they have a problem. Whereas if they said, no, this is really important, this meeting, and it stays in the diary and we're going to have it. And then of course, then there's the skill of having the conversation as well, not to take it for granted. It's an easy conversation to have, but there's a skill. And, I don't know what it's like for you, but you're a coach. You would have watched coaches, we have supervision. And when people see me coach, they go, wow, but how did you find the question? And I'm like, but when I see these other coaches, like who are another level, just watch them, you're like, their presence and the way they build rapport, you go, it's just an ongoing learning, when it comes to
and speaking of that, what made you, because it sounds like from a very young age, you were leadership leaning for sure, even as it sounds like you were a bit of an individual contributor in sports for a while until you weren't, but who was the big influence for you growing up? Like because usually I think leaders are somewhat formed by the people that influence them when they're younger, at least in the direction that you go. Who were you leaning on when you were younger? And sometimes that can be a good example or a bad one, I guess, it depends.
Yeah, I suppose when you ask me the question, the first kind of thought that goes to mind is, my father, sadly, passed away when I was 16. He died of a sudden heart attack when he was 48. And his best friend, a guy called Jock, so the only Scotsman in my town, he was his best friend, and he had a gym in his garage. And I used to go there when I was younger. But when my father died, I really threw myself into the training, and I would have these really good conversations with him.
With Jock, with your dad's friend.
Yeah. So we would train, and then we would sit down, have some tea, and he would we just have these great conversations. And then I would, when I had a tournament or something coming up, I would just make a point of going to see him because I would come out feeling 10 feet tall, So I suppose that was a big inspiration for me, because I thought, gosh, if I could be half as motivational as that, how do what was it he was doing that made me feel that way? And this is an interesting topic in leadership, because the role of, of how demanding to be of somebody, and I don't know what it's like for you, but if I think back to some of the coaches that I've had, the ones that really were a catalyst for change were really demanding of me.
Right.
But I suppose it's that kind of Sir Alex Ferguson approach where, he was still considered as a father figure by all the players. Like, that's an art, I think, to have that kind of be that really demanding and
totally. But I think it goes back to exactly what we were just talking about before this, where it's like, if I know, like for a fact that you've got my best interests at heart, then you can kind of kick the shit out of me. I mean, you can make me run extra laps. You can you can do whatever. And we can take this in sports or in business. But if I know that you absolutely 100% are looking out for me, even when you're being a complete asshole, I'll kind of get that. And I have a military background, and I some of the best leaders I've ever met were in the military, and they were so hard on me, but I understood. Like, I got it. And sometimes the more they believe in you, the harder they are, because they're like, well, Andrew's going to be the next guy. Like, he's got to get tough. He's got to understand this. He's got to become a leader. Now, was his name Jocko or Jock?
Jock. Yeah. So like, it's a nickname for Scottish people. And
got it. Was your dad still alive when you guys started hanging out, or was this after your dad passed?
Yeah. So when my dad was alive, I would go around the house. He did judo. His sons did judo, and we would go around and I would go to the gym and train there. But when my father died, I suppose it was my outlet. So I kind of immersed myself in it, and I just loved being with him and having these conversations. And he would tell me these stories about my dad, but he would also, go out of his way, say, hey, I just subscribed to Roll Hockey magazine. Have you seen this? Have you seen the way this guy's training? He's playing in the RHI, which was the pro league at the time. This guy's doing squats, he's doing cleans. Maybe we should start integrating some of that into your training. So I was doing these, like a little bit of powerlifting when I was, 17, 18, kind of CrossFit-esque style training. This was 93, 94. And I think that gave me a competitive advantage, actually. Yeah.
How was your relationship with your dad?
It was good. It was a good relationship. We were talking about it because I have two sisters, and my father, he was a big drinker, big party. He played cricket. He was a football player, a soccer player. Liked his beers, liked socializing. When I think back, I think he watched me play hockey once. I think I remember him playing football with me in the garden once, despite the fact he had this sports background. So we never had this, but he was very, very loving to us all, he'd always give us a hug. It was always, it was a nice, he was great. I had a very good relationship with him. Yeah. I miss him a lot.
Did the heart attack come from, was it a freak thing, or was it an overall health thing that took him down?
It was a lifestyle, lifestyle thing.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering based on what you were just saying. How did that impact you? Because, I mean, it seems like not just with the sports that you played, but from everything I've read about you and listened to you talk about, you're certainly a health advocate, if not almost like a visionary or a leader in that. So did that influence you a lot, your dad's passing?
Oh, massively.
His lifestyle?
Yeah, massively. But I think that more so in the last 4 years, because, a couple of things. My health wasn't that good. I'd throw myself into the hockey. Like I was completely lost in it. My wife and I had been together at that point for about 4 years. My wife was the stepmother to my daughter. My daughter had lived with me since she was 6. And so I was just immersed in it. And then obviously what happened is that things started to crumble around me. I was getting gout attacks, like suffering with gout, which was something my dad had. And then, so that it was a real shake up for me, because my relationship was failing. I was getting these inflammatory attacks in my body. And I was like, what is going on? How am I, literally following the same pattern as my father? And I wasn't drinking like him or anything like that, but there was something going on. So that put me on a journey to think about health and if you know anybody that's got gout, they spend majority of the time on the internet trying to figure out what they can
How to
eat.
get rid
It's
of it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's which you don't, and there's so much conflicting information. So I started kind of, they were telling me not to eat meat and these things, and so I tried the vegan. I tried sticking with carbs, but I didn't feel great, and then just started exploring kind of ancestral health, and then I found that when I started doing that, and now I look back at what I was doing was repairing my gut, which was repairing my body, which was helping me mentally, and it was kind of life changing, really. And so I'm a big advocate of putting your body first, your health first, fix that, and then you can fix your relationships, and then you can fix your mental health, and then work and career, and really, I think takes care of
I agree
itself.
completely. And you know what's interesting about it, though, and I think, and you may disagree with this, and please, just let me know if you do. But I feel like when it comes to diet, especially in nutrition, everybody gets very up on a pedestal about whatever's working for them, right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
vegan, I'm not, whatever.
right,
And
yeah,
it's the way to be because I feel awesome. And it's like, I literally feel like humans are so unique that there is, not only is there not one size fits all, there's not 20 different diets that would solve everybody, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like
right, yeah,
there's just different people who react differently to different things. And I think so when you do go Google something like, how do I calm my gout down? There's going to be 20 different people that are all passionate about their approach because 20 people found 20 different things that worked for them, right? And they're shouting it off the mountaintops. But, what
yeah,
works for one guy might make yours even worse. And I think gout
yeah, absolutely.
is a vehicle that makes this all look bigger. But I mean, I think for all of us, whether we're feeling sluggish, I think there's something to be said for like listening to ourselves. If our energy is low, if our
Yeah,
whatever it might be, our skin,
yeah,
all of that stuff plays a part, and to just do the things that inherently feel good to you over time. And I think we have to listen to
absolutely.
our intuition a little bit more.
Yeah, and trust it. Not, and I think there are other precursors to that. Of getting into that state where you can trust. Where you're
Yeah.
not just flying around, dealing with stuff, feeling stressed, thriving on cortisol, and that ability to kind of just slow it down and be able to, whether you call it meditation, mindfulness, breath work, but
Yes.
finding time to build this in, which for your exec, your dominant minded exec might find a bit fluffy,
Oh yeah,
but
that
once they
that
start
whole
doing it,
statement I just said when I was in that mode of just getting shit done, I would have been like, well, that'd be nice if I had the time to actually sit down and do it. And in the meantime, you're going through the drive-through at a fast food restaurant, right? Like
yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
so it actually
yeah,
does take first a level of consciousness or whatever you want to call it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Of taking a pause and at least going, what the hell am I doing? Because this doesn't feel very good, and maybe I need to slow down to actually figure out what's going on.
yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to your other point, the kind of n equals one as well. That we're our own personal experiment, right? So
Yeah.
you know, I don't I don't like it when and I probably did it myself, because when you have this kind of transformation, you're like, well, you just do what I did. It works, right? And you realize that actually it's not for everybody. Um, and I found actually, without going too deep or digressing too much, the most part, the people that say that their diet helps and this other diet helps is usually because they just eliminated processed foods. That's kind of
Right.
the thing that they all have in common. Like, and if you just do that, then I think you're doing well.
There's a few universals, right? Too much sugar is bad. Too much processed food is
Yeah,
bad, or
yeah,
any even. I mean, the more you can eliminate, the
yeah,
better. Exercise is good. Like there's some things we know
yeah.
about any diet,
There's
right?
some key principles. Yeah,
Yeah, you
exactly. Yeah,
don't get
yeah,
to go like, well, I listened to my heart. My heart said sit on my ass, and it's like, well,
yeah,
that
yeah,
might
yeah,
be
exactly.
you might need some outside advice on
Yeah.
that one. So tell me about I kind of sidetracked you off the hockey journey a little bit, but I know that so you left it where the team was starting to get buy-in and really starting to I think get some momentum, and I know you guys went on to do some great things. So can you take me there?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So we went to Pool B, the World Championship. So the World Championships, like ice hockey, are Pool A, Pool B, and different divisions below that. So we went into Pool B. nearly been relegated the year before. So we'd lost to Australia the year before. Our first game was against Australia. And I remember it very clearly, actually, because the captain said to me, "What do you think the score will be today?" And I said to him, "I think we'll beat Australia 5-0. And he was kind of irritated by it, because he said to me, "You can't say that to the players. They need to be on it. You know, it's Australia as well. So Great Britain, Australia, the rivalry is huge." And he thought I was being too complacent. I said, "With the work we've done, the way you guys are playing, I have no doubt we'll beat them 5-0. And I remember going to the dressing room, and all the shoulders were up, you know, like everyone was tense. It was like my first game as coach. And I just said to them, look, why don't you go out there and fail for 20% of the time? Like, just see how many mistakes you can make tonight against Australia. It's our first game. Fail as hard as you can. And I'm always certain if you fail for 20, 30% of the time, we'll still beat Australia." And all the shoulders came down. We beat them 6-1. So I was wrong.
You had the goal differential. Right. Yeah. That part right.
And the captain, he still talks about, you know, like, yeah. So that was good. That was a good start. And then we went on to the short of it is we won Pool B. We beat Austria for the first time. Austria would move up to Pool A. They'd come down. Slovenia would go up. They'd come to, you know, it was kind of a fight between those two. So we beat Austria, which was great. We went up into the A pool, and you know, it was like, well, good luck. You know, first game's against the Czech Republic. You know, right. World champions. So they had, I think, Aleš Hemský playing, who was with the Dallas Stars at the time, and earning $11 million a year. You know, Chris Hendy, who was a cab driver in Brighton. You know, it's like kind of worlds apart. But we tied with the Czechs first game. Wow. We had a plan, so that was great. We beat Finland, which and our goalie was phenomenal. And then we unfortunately we lost to Canada in the quarterfinal, but we went into the game against Canada, you know, 100% believing we were going to win. Like, it was just this change in mindset, same players, different behavior. It was just a great experience. And then unfortunately we played Sweden in a relegation game. We went down. Following year, we played Pool B again. So we were the only team that actually went up again. So we played, we won Pool B the following year. So we had this kind of 4-year period of just incredible results.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great, and just a great experience. Yeah.
And you guys ended up winning the gold over there, right?
We won the gold in Pool B.
In Pool B,
yeah. Which gave us promotion into the A pool. Yeah.
Wow. Is that the only way up into the A? You have to medal.
Yeah, you have to win the playoff game,
you
know, to go up into the A pool. Yeah. So it was the first time Great Britain had ever done that. And it was just a great, you know, being in the A pool and being with those teams, and the dressing rooms are different, the treatment's different. It was great. It was just, for the guys, it was just such a great experience, because we were just amateur team there, you know?
Yeah.
So people talk about, like, it's like Cool Runnings, I guess, you know, that kind of thing.
I totally remember that movie. How did you, why did you transfer out of coaching? I mean, it sounds like it was going really well.
I was burning out because, you know, it was, I was growing a business. I was trying to bring those principles into...
Not to interrupt, but that gets back a little bit to the gout and your relationship and the move to...
Yeah, it was all kind of just coming to an end. I mean, it was more insidious than that, but it you know, 2017, it really caught up with me. And so I stopped coaching properly in 2015. And because you know, I was obsessive about it, you know, and I don't regret that as far as the results we got. What I regret is not being as focused on the other areas of my life. You know, it's kind of dropped the ball on that. And that caught up with me, and the stress with that. And I think the gout wasn't just diet related. I think it was stress related. You know, create acid in the body and so on, and the inflammation. And that's when I guess I started my own mini transformation, you know, in 2017, where I was like, okay, I've got to look after myself here. I've got to get my own oxygen mask on, and start being there for my family. My wife and I separated for 2 years, and then we decided to start fresh, and we started sort of building trust with one another. And we moved to Prague. It wasn't easy at first. We were still kind of working on things, but it's been amazing. Now I feel blessed. We just had little Eddie. He's 13 weeks old.
Oh
So
wow, you got an infant?
yeah.
Oh
So if
wow,
we have any,
congrats.
Harry and Freya, and my oldest daughter's now doing a course, a ski instructor course in Morzine, France. So it's no, it's great, and I feel very lucky, Ken. I mean, we have a good life, and we hockey is still a big part of my life here in the Czech Republic. I'm coaching. My son is 6. He's playing at Sparta, which is the most prestigious club. My daughter's a goalie, and she's playing at the other club. So we have a bit of rivalry in the house, which is quite good fun. But
Nice.
yeah, but it's in balance, and it works. And I thank COVID a little bit for that as well, because it kind of changed the business model, allowed me to do things a little bit differently. So
What and talk to me about that business model a little bit. So how did you, because now when I hear of you as a player coach guy, I mean, I think of you as, all the research I've done on you and shows that I've listened to you on and going through your website and your programs is exactly that. Is, you're the guy that, you know, again, did these phenomenal things in sport, but then took them over to, or can take them over to the corporate side to teach the lessons of athletes and coaches to corporate America. Can you expand on that a little bit and what you're doing there?
yeah, so I think, like a lot of coaches, you go through a lot of different iterations. So I did the consultancy work, where I was following like a McKinsey around, or and doing spending time in the Middle East, and I was in White Plains working up there as a consultant in New York, and doing the traditional consultancy work. But I noticed that there was this role, particularly in sales, where they would hire or promote a top performing or a high contributing salesperson to a management role, but they still had a sales target. And particularly in recruitment, it was part of the business model in recruitment. But I see it now in tech startups and other organizations. And I just done my master's in organizational psychology, and so I was kind of talking about this concept a lot. And my acknowledgement of it was that these businesses, they could really open up their business and scale quite quickly if that person did the job well. If they did it badly, so they all in on their sales, but neglected the management piece, or they just couldn't balance the two, so the sales would drop off, the business would really suffer. Like, you'd have a small to medium sized business, for example, of 50 or 70. It was like overnight they were back at 20, and right. They were trying to grow because they didn't have the leadership there to grow, and people would talk with their feet and get fed up with the culture. So I decided, well, that's a problem that needs solving. So I designed a program back in 2012 for that. And obviously I was doing the work with the Team GB as well. So I was kind of pulling these parallels together and testing them and getting feedback. And then now it's become the kind of my flagship program is the player coach. So it's going into sales organizations, predominantly recruitment businesses, and teaching, helping these high performing salespeople coach and lead teams. So and it's a very really specific type of content.
Yeah, because I would think that niche, whether it's recruiting or anybody else, has to do with, like you said, when there's a lot of companies, even big companies, that they'll have a local office. Like I used to work for one at, huge, like 40,000+ employees. But at the local level, you're a guy or a girl that's got 6 sales reps, right? And a number.
Yep.
And you're participating in that number somehow, whether your name's on the board or whether you're going out on field rides with the reps or whatever it is. Like, right. You're driving a collective number. And like most companies are like that unless they've got such scale that the sales or a model where the sales team is all inside, right? It's very rare that the leader just leads on a sales team. It's almost always that they've got to materially participate somehow, right? Or they'll take the biggest clients, or they'll help close the biggest deals, or whatever it is,
Yeah. And it could be, they're still a rainmaker, or they just account management, but they've still got this dual role. They've still got to try and compartmentalize these different roles and not drop that. We talked about, I call it bench coaching on our program. We are giving feedback, whether it's on the sales floor or virtually, or acknowledging good work, being in the game and giving feedback, and then training, making sure you're getting on the field and doing training. So that could be just getting your team together to do some problem solving and work through, using a framework to do that. And then the mentoring. So I say bench coach daily, train weekly, mentor monthly. And if you systemize that, then you can focus on your sales. But that's your baseline, just bench coach daily, train weekly, mentor monthly, get that diarized. And then it's the skill. We teach them the skill to actually do that, and how to give feedback, how to keep your team motivated, how to run training, which is experiential and fun and interesting and engaging, and then how to have a good mentoring conversation, which is goal orientated, but it feels like a conversation, and you're building that relationship and trust that we talked about earlier.
Totally. I've seen so many people in the business world that sales especially where, because sales reps by nature, I think, are ambitious, right? Or they should be. Like if you're hiring the right sales reps, so they're ambitious towards money, they're ambitious towards career, whatever it might be. And a lot of times I think what we do in sales leadership is we go, well, here's Ken and Andrew and Nick and John and whoever else and Susie, and well, Susie's closing 100 grand a month, Andrew's closing 90, Ken's closing 80, whatever. Susie's going to be the sales manager, right? Because she's got big numbers.
The meritocracy,
yeah, and it's like we do it all the time, and that person wants that, right? Because they're ambitious, so they'll go like, "Hey, I'm your best performer. You should make me the sales manager." And I think that is a very common way to screw up a perfectly good sales rep, and then really hurt your team. And don't get me wrong, if you have great performance, that should absolutely give you a ticket to the interview process and to being considered. But you also got to trust the people around you, no different again than that coach in a sport environment that says, you're not going to play forward right now. You're going to play defense or whatever, right? Like, it's just like, that's where you fit. That's where your skill set is,
Yeah, absolutely. And so I put them into these, different archetypes, I guess. You got the Mavericks on your team, that you might, your soccer, well, you don't even know soccer, know who Cristiano Ronaldo is, I don't think, but he would be kind of my Maverick. Sure. Would you want him to be the head coach of Portugal right now? Probably not. I don't know.
Right.
Versus a quarterback. So I talk about Mavericks and quarterbacks. And so when I was building my core leadership team on the hockey team, I wanted a quarterback mindset. Like I'd rather have Tom Brady being the player coach of the team than perhaps Ronaldo, with that kind of that mindset. So that was a big thing for me, was to find these players who other coaches might not pick. They might not select them because they might not be as fast and as offensive. They'd rather have all the players that are scoring the goals, right? And snipers. But for me, I needed someone who could slow things down on the rink, who could calm the dressing room down when I wasn't there. To make sure that if they went for a beer, that we're going for a beer, not 10. All these different things but they got that presence and that gravitas to do that.
They're the Roy Kent they're the Roy Kent of the Great Britain team, right? Do you ever watch that Ted Lasso show?
Yeah, I know exactly. That kind of without the bad language, maybe.
But the one who's like, he's going to gel the team together even if he doesn't have the golden 100%. Foot anymore. And when we were talking about,
he's a good example of being demanding. He's demanding, but he had that thing where they kind of loved him, right?
Because he cares.
And Ted Lasso needed that because he's not that. Exactly. And I was a bit like that,
Well, I'm also thinking when you took the team over, because I've thought about this almost every time, and I think this just came from getting beat up maybe a little bit in taking over teams and having to be in situations like you were with that hockey team of going, how am I going to get these guys to buy in? And we did it a lot in the corporate world with acquisitions, right? One company buys another, and let's say you've got 100 new employees coming to work, and you want them to do well, but the only way typically for the company being acquired to do well is to assimilate the culture. So how can you get someone to assimilate and kind of, I don't want to say fall in line, but kind of, right? They need to get online. And I feel like the fastest ways to do that are the two that we just talked about. One is what I would call the shop steward. And I don't know if you guys have that term in the UK or not, but the shop steward is like unions in the United States. They have a shop steward. The shop steward is the guy that forms the union. So they might not be a leader necessarily, but they've got a mouth, right? They lead by influence and sometimes negatively, but they're the ones that if you don't win them over, they can take people down with them, sort of, right? Yeah. So you've got the shop steward, and then like you said, you've got the quarterback or the leader or however someone else wants to distinguish that. And I always found that, like, if you can go in and assess a team right away and go, who are my influencers on this team? And again, there's going to be one that like is the maverick, like what you're saying, the maverick type of influencer. They might be an individual contributor, but they've got influence, right? That people watch them because they have good stats. They look up to them. It's that sales rep that maybe doesn't fit the culture or has a loud mouth or does things that are inappropriate, but they have good numbers, so people like respect them. And then you've got the other one that can actually bring the real leadership together. And I sort of felt like very early on as a leader, identify who those people are, win their hearts and mind, and let them win the other hearts and minds.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I have also this theory that I think there are some mavericks who can transform into a quarterback, they go through a level of maturity, and it's like overnight something changes in their life and they shift into it, and some don't. It
sounds like that might have been you a little bit. You said when you were a player, you were a bit selfish, and you went from being the selfish player to the gold medal winning coach. So I don't know if you said selfish, but you said kind of focused on your own stats, right? So
yeah, no, I think I was. I think I put my hands up and say that. I mean, I think I was a team player, but I could ostracize myself a little bit. I was very focused on my health and my fitness. I didn't really like it when guys went out drinking and, or didn't take care of themselves. I felt that it was letting me down. That's the selfish part, was that it was maybe in hindsight, could I have gone out and it was being a team player, going out and having a few beers with them.
Right.
Whereas I was like, I'm not putting this thing in danger. I want to win tomorrow. And so in some ways, whilst I thought I was being the best version of myself, in other ways, I was like, you're ruining my opportunity over here. So it was more about me wanting to win rather than the collective. So when I look back, and maybe I'm giving myself a bit of a hard time, but that's kind of how I look
it's sort
back
of like
on it.
imposing your standards on everybody else, whether that was the right thing for them. So it comes off
that irritates players.
Yeah,
I know it would irritate some of the guys. Yeah, for sure. So, that was just the way it was then for me. And I guess I hadn't really thought about it until you said it, that, maybe I did make that shift, because I was a very different person when I was coaching.
Well, the reason I brought it up is I feel like the Mavericks that convert are the best leaders because they know what being a Maverick is like. I mean, they have a point of reference. You know what I mean? It's why drug addicts are great drug counselors after, you know what I mean? Like they know. So these guys know how to pull people that are isolated, people that have good performance. And I think that's why it's so important to win them over. So tell me what's going on with you now. What's kind of a week in the life of Andrew these days?
So this week we've been running a leadership course because it's online. So we do like a 2-hour workshop every morning for a week. So that's been kind of what I've been up to today. We kicked that off today. But other than that, I do a lot of content, as you probably noticed. I'm really kind of trying to embrace that more. I've kind of dabbled with it over the years, and I've not really been that consistent. Whereas now I'm leading with content. So that's something I'm excited about doing, and doing it for the right reasons. Not just for the sake of doing content, but actually, what am I trying to achieve with this for the person reading it?
Right.
I'm coaching my son's hockey team. So I'm quite, he's 6, he's on the ice 3 times a week. So I try and help out with the coaches there. And that's busy and,
and
raising a family. And yeah, exactly.
So one thing you're not doing is sleeping a lot probably. So
not a lot of sleeping yet, but no, my wife's incredible. And, so yeah, we're good. And we're having a lot of fun.
Very cool. Well, it's been a privilege to meet you. Really enjoyed our talk. It went by quickly.
Likewise.
And I'm definitely going to be looking into your programs. We'll leave all the ways to get in contact with you and, of course, to check out your programs in the show notes. But thanks so much for being on.
It's been a pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you.